So today we're going to be talking about Footsite's newest payment processor that you guys all know about. Uh, Name is Adyen. Basically, we're going to go over the guide that I created a couple months ago now. Some of you guys are a little bit confused on how the payment processor works and how Footsites look at your transactions, thus uh, forwarding cancellations, payment verification emails, and whatnot. So we're here today to talk about how to avoid those, or the best way to go about with setting up your profiles, so that way you guys can get some shipping confirmations for shoes. Um, so yeah, Foot sites, the main sites basically are Foot Locker, East Bay, Foot Action, Champs, Kids Foot Locker, and also Foot Locker Canada. They all use this payment processor now as of today. Basically, the system abbreviates AVS for address verification system. Uh, and we're going to look at different ways today to kind of troubleshoot your profiles to make sure that you guys aren't getting cancellations. Um, it is inevitable to get cancellations. It's bound to happen, but we're going to find ways to avoid that and also just kind of help you guys out. So let's go over the first page of our guide. Basically, it's just an introduction of what Adyen is. Um, so as you guys have seen before, we used to receive these customer care emails. Uh, Now that Adyen and Footsites have gone over to the new payment processor, uh, refunds are more instant now, opposed to back then when uh, refunds took about three to 7 days for them to actually refund your money. So that's a plus on Footsite's part. So on our second page, there are a set of rules that Adyen follows. So we're going to go over these rules. Basically, the whole list: card numbers, delivery addresses, holder names, IP addresses, shopper emails, shopper name, shopper reference, shopper telephone number. These are all things Footsites look at when they are going through your orders. It's an automated filter. So if any of these things are incorrect and they find that there's some sort of fraud related with these informations that you provide when you submit your order, then you have a good chance of getting canceled. So we're going to go over all of these things. There are, let's see, 3, 6, 8 rules. So yeah, we're going to go over the first one: card numbers. So when you guys are looking at card numbers, basically when Adyen when you guys submit your orders on Footsites, because they all use the same payment processor, if you guys are running the same card numbers across different sites under the same Footsites, like East Bay, Foot Locker, and Foot Actions, for example, if you're all running those sites at the same time with the same card numbers, you're bound to get flagged. I wouldn't recommend you guys running these sites at the same time. Pick one site and one profile with one unique set of card, and make sure you stick with it. Otherwise, you're just going to get canceled. Um, so yeah, what I do when I run Foot Locker or when I run Foot Sites for a release, I usually know that Foot Locker does have the most stock, but a lot of people know that now. They get stock numbers day before, and they basically focus on one site because of how limited their cards are. Um, so what I usually do is, if say I'm running hundreds or thousands of profiles, I pick one site. It's usually Foot Locker US with the most stock. So I usually just run Foot Locker. But if you guys have the same kind of mindset going into a release, then that might not be ideal because that's kind of how everyone else is thinking now, just because of this new rule. So there could be more people running for Foot Locker opposed to Champs or East Bay for Action. Let's take tomorrow, for example. If the Bel Air stock number is 20,000 and Foot Action has 10,000, uh, for me, I would just run Foot Locker. I typically just run Foot Locker, but for you guys could choose Foot Action because there could be less people running it, right? So having a unique set of cards on different sites is the main thing. You don't want to be overlapping. Only run on one site if you guys have minimal cards. Um, if you guys do have merchant lock cards, uh, they usually you should be only using it on one foot site. Otherwise, you have a higher chance of getting payment declines. I've had instances where I use a merchant lock card. It's been used before on Foot Locker, but I was still able to use it on, say, Foot Action or eBay. But typically, I try to stick with one just to avoid the payment decline. It's just not worth it for me. Uh, Unless there's some sort of a restock, then there is a cooldown when you guys are running uh, foot sites. Say you guys do get flagged on these rules, so the 8 set of rules, when you guys get a 3 point deduction, you actually get pretty much blacklisted or soft banned. From my knowledge, I think that Adyen soft bans you guys for about 3 days. So after that 3 day, you do get unbanned, and you can run the same card that you ran on a Foot Locker release or a restock about 3 days after on a different foot site. So that's card numbers. Anyone have any questions about card numbers, or Justin, if you can add something that I forgot to say?
No, that's everything. I'll just add towards the end.
Okay. All right. So card numbers is our first thing. Our second one. All right. So our second set of rules that Adyen looks at is our delivery address. Um, so this right here is where you guys want to be very careful. A lot of people have questions about delivery addresses or billing addresses, shipping addresses. What I recommend is if you guys have a card uh, that's the same shipping as billing, I would keep it the same. I just have better results with that. There are other sites where you can get away with it because of the filtration that's not as strict. But as for foot sites, the rule states that the shopper delivery address used more than X times within a period will get flagged. So what you want to do when you guys look at this rule is you want to be sort of jigging it a little bit, even though it says that a lot of the times we tell you guys to keep it the same as UPS. Most recently, like from my testing, I've switched up the first line address um, a little bit with either the 4 letter jig, so a random 4 characters on the front of the house number or in between the house number and the street name. Or what I do is I do either a random 1 character or a random 2 character. That's worked out for me. Some people will tell you to just keep it exactly the same as what's on, Google Maps, or if you guys use UPS, there's a UPS site where you guys can kind of enter in your address and it formats it to what's exactly how your address should look on when you're through UPS. Um, so
I
there
w
are 2 different ways. There is a bit of flexibility with the address line 1, address line 2. So Justin's going to show you guys when you guys look up your address, say you do have some sort of abbreviation on the address, it's going to show you exactly how it should look like on uh, on UPS or USPS.
so I'm gonna go ahead and you know, he said UPS. They used to use UPS, now they switch over to USPS system. So this is the best way. I'll link this link later. But the address I'm gonna use is a Nike World headquarters address. So I want to put drive. Um, Change the city to Beaverton, Oregon. You hit find, then it will give you the recommended address that you should use. So it should be 1 Southwest Borman Drive. So you should always double check your address using this system, and I always use the recommended address that's given here. You don't have to use the full extra zips, but you can. I just normally use my standard zip, but this web page, you should always go there and verify that this is the address it's given. Because if you do go to footlocker.com, uh, if it lets me add a shoe, it should say the same thing. So like it says, it gives you the recommended address. You notice how this recommended address is the same recommended address as here. So, yep.
Yeah. So Footsites used to use UPS carrier. Now they use USPS. So you can either check manually by doing a mock checkout on the foot site or just going on the USPS site. But like I said, there are some flexibility with how you guys can deal with your address. Everyone is going to be different. What I recommend you guys do, if you do have a large set of profiles, go through a trial and error phase. So basically, for a release like tomorrow, if you guys do plan on trying to go for, say 10 pairs, and you have 20 plus profiles, I would split those profiles up and try different set of rules. Um, it FootSafe is actually more flexible than it used to be. I want to say, uh, like I said, I've tried the 4 letter jig, the random 1 character, random 2 characters. I've gotten shipping for both ways. Some people will tell you that uh, they'll have like a lucky address. I sort of believe that's true. So it all comes down to like trial and error and a bit of luck. But at the same time, there are other factors that foot sites look into when you submit your order that could cause the fraudulent cancellations. Um, so yeah, recommendation for delivery address, if you can use the same shipping as billing, use the recommended USPS address for half of your profiles. And for the other half of profiles, try a jig method. So first line, address line 1, random character, 4, 2, or 1 character, doesn't matter, as long as your address looks uh, correct to USPS and that it doesn't get lost. So that's the main thing. So a bit of trial and error, and you kind of see what kind of data you gain for tomorrow. As tomorrow is a more of a volume cop, since there's a lot of stock, I would recommend testing that out before next week, when next week matters more. So delivery address. Is there anything you want to add, Justin?
No, I. So what Will says works for Will, but like I said, what works for me is keeping all the information true as possible. Like what Will says, test them out. It would be a good time to test out your profiles. As the release is not as great for certain people, but you also have to remember is if you do get PV'd, it's 99% of the chance, 99% of the time, it's instant refund. So you can do
Yeah.
testings right now for release. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can do Will's method or you can do my method. And like Will said, some people do have lucky addresses where they can do whatever they want and they'll still ship and get no PVs. So yeah, it's best to figure out the Saturday before a big upcoming release.
Yep. So that is number two of the Adyen rules.
Oh, actually, one more thing.
Yeah.
For the delivery address, all your profiles from what I ran before, you can use the same billing address for everything. You can when Will says when you want to do the four-letter jig means every single profile is a different letter, so you can mix them up. For me, if I leave everything true and leave it to one profile, but different credit cards, like it's fine. But it could be different for everybody else. So see what works for you.
All right. Rule number three is the cardholder name. Uh, there's been a lot of questions about this, especially in regards to virtual credit cards. Um, so a lot of you guys use Privacy, Capital One Eno, Amex BCC, Citi BCCs. Um, there's a bit of flexibility when you guys use virtual credit cards. Um, one of the factor that comes into play is the cardholder's name. So uh, when I use Privacy or used to use Privacy, I would have flexibility of changing my shipping and uh, my shipping name, and also my cardholder name. Uh, but uh, when I when I was running with Privacy, I actually saw less, more cancellations actually with Privacy opposed to Capital One Eno or Amex BCC. This rule here, basically what I follow is, and what's worked is I use the exact same name, first name and last name, that's on file um, with your card. That's linked to your main credit card. That's on file with the credit card company, right? So if you're using Capital One Eno, you can actually go into the Eno app and then open up the mailing address, and you can see what the name is on there. Uh, I would recommend you stick with the same name, first and last name, when you are setting up for your card name and your shipping address name or billing address name. So yeah, just keep the first and last name the same. It's not actually a big deal. I've had it happen where I've tried out a random first name and the same last name, and I still got in shipping with the new payment processor. But I saw better results when I was keeping it honest with this information. So same first and last name when you guys are running with on foot sites. Okay. Uh, Anything to add on this?
No, I think you're
Yeah.
point on.
So it's pretty straightforward. Pretty much keep it true with the cardholder name. So number four. Number four. This is a pretty big one. IP address. So a lot of us use proxies. Typically, when you live on, uh, you know, you're using proxies in another country or another state, and you're running on foot sites and you're shipping to your physical address. The proxy could be completely different, really far in distance from where your shipping address is. So when you place an order, the Adyen payment processor notices that, and when it sees that you're placing an order, say from, you know, so I live in Vancouver. I'm placing an order from Vancouver with a Vancouver IP in Canada, and I'm trying to ship to say New Jersey, right? It is a bit far away, and the system will recognize that. They'll look into that, and if they see it as fraud for that reason, then you'll get a point deduction And like I mentioned before, when you hit a 3 point deduction for breaking these set of rules, you do get automatically soft banned. So for IP address on foot sites, I find that they aren't as strict as what it says in this rule. I use Virginia proxies when I bought Foot Locker Canada. So they're both different countries, and I managed to get shipping confirmation. So uh, for this IP address rule, if you guys can, if you live in Virginia and you're running Virginia proxies, which are probably the best set of proxies to use for foot sites in terms of speed, then I'd recommend stick with that. But if you are someone like me who live in Canada and most of my proxies are US based and I'm trying to copy them somewhere in Canada, then you really have no choice. But the IP address rule, I don't actually follow. From what I do, like I still run for it and I managed to get shipping confirmation. So IP address is not a big deal when it comes down to it matching with your shipping address and your proxy that you're using. So there is flexibility with this rule. Um, Justin might have a different experience.
It's not that, but I will say this: create individual proxy lists per each site. Try not to use the same proxy list that you use on Footlocker on FootAction. Um, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, so
I have ran into issues. So the guide says assign proxies the same task, the same card. You know 99.9% of the chances of you doing that is very slim because everybody's either using residentials unless you have the same set of data centers for a very long time. I would what I have been doing is every web page I'll create a new every I have a proxy list per each web page. Proxy list for Foot Locker, Foot Action, Champ Sports, Eastbay, Kids Foot Locker. I would always change those proxies every release so it's never the same proxy and all those lists have different set of proxies. There is a chance that we'll have the same in there if you're using residentials because out of the million proxies in the proxy pool you can hit that 0.001% chance of having the same proxy, but it's very slim. But I always generate as many proxies as I can per list.
yeah, so when you guys are running the same proxy and you're breaking the rules of running the same card, the same profile with the same address, foot sites, Adyen's going to recognize that and it's going to flag you. Just because a lot of these release items they stay release limited to one per customer. Um, if they notice that you're using the same IP or two different IPs with the same set of card information and you're trying to check out at the same time, the system will see that and thus you'll get a higher chance of cancellations. So always stick to one IP per task um, across all foot sites. Don't overlap.
So I think the questions people are going to wonder is like, what if I do overlap? What's going to happen? I have overlapped before because I was being very arrogant. I was like, oh, this rule does not fucking apply, blah, blah, blah. I ran into issues where my cart was emptied. I exceeded profile limit. Um, it wouldn't even let me check out. Like there was releases where that's what happened to me. That I just ran one proxy list. Say example, I had 500 tasks and I ran the same task on all four web pages and I ran the same 1,000 proxies or whatever amount of proxies I was using. And that's what happened. Like I would get profile limit exceeded on Kodai. I would get cart emptied. I was not able to check out. So you should be very careful on selecting different profiles per site and different setup proxies per you know a site.
Mhm. And like if a restock does happen and you guys already have your task somewhat set up, your proxy list already set up, and you're basically just trying to quick task, I'd recommend just running it anyways. Like I said, the ban that happens isn't a permanent ban on your information or anything. It is just a soft ban. So
So speaking of restocks, I have ran the same information on restocks and the same proxies, so I don't think the system is as strict as it is on releases compared to restocks, but that's just my experience.
I have a quick question.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so I have around 500 Amex VCCs. Let's say I run, for example, 500 cards on Footlocker. Can I also run the same cards on like JD
no.
Group?
Oh, JD Group.
Oh,
So
JD Group, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
foot
Thank you.
sites and JD Groups are two different web pages. So you can run. So this is just specifically for foot sites. Foot Action, Foot Locker, Champs, Eastbay, and Champ Sports. If it's not pertaining to this web page, all this information doesn't matter. You can Finish Line, Foot Locker, Yeezy Supply, Adidas. Doesn't matter. Those are totally different sites. It's just these are just pertaining to these five web pages that we are talking about. That's why the five main foot sites, or the five only foot sites.
Mhm. So if the releases are happening with Shopify, foot sites, Finish Line, JD Sports, uh, Demandware sites, you can run them all separately. The only thing you want to keep if your profile is if you're very limited to profiles, say you only have 20, only stick to one foot site. Don't run the 20 profiles across all East Bay, Foot Action, Foot Locker. So you kind of have to do your research ahead of beforehand. Kind of take a look at what the stock number is. If you see higher stock number, then go for that site because you probably do have a better chance in copying. But at the same time, if like I mentioned before, if you sort of think that way, then other people are most likely thinking the same way. Thus, more people running on the same site. So just be wary with that. Um, but yeah, I mean, if things do start getting becoming out of stock and you see a different foot site restocking, then why not just run a different foot site. But when you initially start a release, stick to one site, and if you fail, you don't cop, and you notice other sites restocking, then start your task for those because the ban isn't permanent. Like I mentioned, it's going to get you'll be able to use the profiles on other foot sites in the future. And also, if you do get canceled now, you get an instant refund, so it's not really a big deal. So this is where you kind of want to take advantage, do a bit of trial and error, especially tomorrow with the release. Like tomorrow, heavy stock numbers, um, kind of figure out what your setup's like, because next week is what's going to matter. So that is rule number 4. Rule number 5. So this rule here, a lot of people have questions about email addresses, whether or not you should be using a catch-all, if you should be using real Gmails, if you should be using the dot trick or the number plus trick. There's different ways, you know, that you could be using emails on when you're checking out or setting up your profiles. So my recommendation when you guys are running foot sites and you're looking into email addresses, I use both a catch-all and I've used real Gmails that are auto forwarded to a main Gmail or a master Gmail. Um, so what you guys can do, um, you know, I've had both work, both shipping confirmation on both ways. So tomorrow, just split your profiles with a set of catch-all emails and a set of real Gmails. If you guys are lacking Gmails because Gmails do take a bit of time to make, you also need to verify each one with the phone number after a certain extent. But there are providers that sell Gmails. I would also be careful on what Gmails you're buying because sometimes the Gmails that get created, at least the latest Gmails, Google can now detect that the Gmails was created by a third-party software, and when it gets created by a third-party software, it's against the term of service, and they are going to ban that Gmail. So at the same time, don't opt for something that's cheap. Get something that's aged. An aged Gmail you can basically use for your auto solve, your one click, your raffle entries. So there's a lot of different uses. They are a little more expensive, but at the same time, you're more likely not to be banned by Google, just because the Gmails are already trusted since lasted they've been created for so long. Um, so yeah, you can either use a catch-all or real Gmail. Um, for tomorrow, what I'll be doing is I'll be using catch-all, just because I have a few thousand profiles. I don't have thousands of Gmails. Um, what I've worked for me, catch-alls worked. I would stay away from the dot trick. Dot trick hasn't been working as well since the latest payment processors implemented. Um, yeah, stay away from the other tricks. Just stick with the .com catch-all if you can. Some catch-alls with the I think the XYZ, uh, those catch-alls, I think are they actually don't work on foot sites. So when you guys are purchasing a catch-all, get the .com domains. Um, so yeah,
The the domains that
staying
have worked for me were .com, .org, .net, .club, and I have not tried .vip. Uh,
.vip. I had one. I used to use it, but I used to use it with privacy cards. It hasn't been working as well, so I kind of, I got rid of .vip long ago. Another thing about the Gmail is it recommends that your Gmail, at least inside the Gmail, has something pertaining your first and last name that's on your shipping address profile. Uh, I found that that isn't true. They aren't very strict with that rule. You can get away with running or having a different name or different word that's completely different from your first and last name on your shipping profile. That's worked for me. But if you do want to follow the rule and test out if the whole name thing works out for you, then use your first and last name in the catch-all, and then add a few numbers or a few random characters. If you guys do have easy mode for Chef, third-party software, it's a profile converter. It it makes things very easy in converting and jigging. So if you guys do have a lot of profiles, are you looking into scaling, then I definitely look into that tool. But other than that, shopper email, it's not very strict. You can use catch-alls, or you can use real Gmails. Both work.
what's worked for me was having your first, whatever the billing's first and last name in the Gmail. So, for example, Joe West is his first and last name for his billing email. So the email I would be having would be Joe West, then a digits of numbers like 123, or you know multiple digits of numbers at catchall.com. Then the next email is the same thing as Joe West, or whatever first and last name, the billing name. That's what has worked for me. Doesn't work for other people, so you have to see what works for you. Like Will said, he's done emails with and without the name, and it worked for him. So it's best for you guys to figure out what works for you guys.
So tomorrow, best is to test tomorrow, see what works for you. Do half and half if you don't know what's working for you. Gain some more data on releases like tomorrow. Um, but yeah, there is flexibility with using different emails or Gmails. I believe that was number 5. So we're moving on to rule number 6. All right. So rule number six, very uh, self-explanatory. I mentioned it when I was talking about cardholder name. So basically, your shipping first and last name should be the same as your uh, name of card on file. If you are using privacy, then you have the flexibility in using whatever name you want. But if you can, and what I'd recommend is you keep the same first and last name of what's on file. All right. So shopper name, there's that. Uh, our second last rule is shopper reference. Um, so shopper reference. This one, honestly, it you there isn't really anything to it.
I think this one doesn't really apply to it anymore since.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to foot sites. But I mean, if you guys have PayPal checkout enabled on bots like bots that support it like Kodai, then I would recommend you guys enable PayPal checkout if it does work. PayPal checkouts rather than guest checkouts with real credit cards or credit cards, virtual credit cards. You'll get a better chance of shipping confirmations. But with PayPal checkout, you can also do a PayPal guest checkout, which is what bots like Kodai does when it's trying to process auto checkout. Uh, yeah, basically each session needs to be unique. It Foot sites don't really relate to anything to do with anything with shopper reference. So rule number seven, you can kind of disregard. And our last rule.
What I'm gonna mention about PayPal checkout was, um, I think Nas was the one who told me he ran a test where he checked out with one profile with PayPal checkout on Kodai on I think Footlocker, then he checked out with the PayPal checkout on Foot Action, and it canceled. Uh, that's what I'm pretty sure that's what he told me, but maybe I read that shit wrong.
Yeah, either way, just follow the rule. Just run on one foot site during an initial release, and then if you get like if restocks do happen and you guys manage not to get enough or anything at all, then why not just run another foot site for the sake of it. Our last rule: shopper telephone number. Um, so there is flexibility in how you guys set up your phone number on your profiles. For this rule, what I follow is if I'm shipping to somewhere in New Jersey, I will keep the same area code, the first three digits of the area code. Um, I would keep that, and I would randomize my uh, last seven digits. And I would do this across all of my profiles, so they're all unique numbers. I'd recommend you guys do this method. Don't use the same telephone number. You do want to try to trick the system in thinking that you're a unique person. So what I do is, and what's worked for me is, I just keep the same area code as my shipping address for the first three digits, and then I randomize the last seven digits.
I do the
All
exact
right.
same thing too.
Yeah. So you guys might ask, all these set of rules applies to foot sites. There are some flexibility. What this guide is, it was made so that you guys get a better understanding of how the Adyen payment processor works. With the set of rules, not all foot sites are as strict as you may think. I actually prefer this better than what the last payment processor was, uh, just because of the whole instant refund thing. It just gives you a better chance of running for restocks, and if you do have like a low credit limit, then it gives you more opportunity to be running, or back then foot sites would be holding your money for days, so you'd be limited in running for restocks just because your credit limit was already used up. But yeah, Adyen, this was all this information was grabbed from the Adyen payment processor website. It's kind of broken down into what foot sites look at. So other than that, we went through all 8 rules. If 3 of these rules are broken, you get a point deduction. You will get soft banned. All right. So our final thoughts, just kind of recap on everything. So we have 10 thoughts. So our one, each card as if they were merchant locked onto the site. Keep it consistent for all future releases. 2, I wouldn't run the same profiles with 2 different SKUs at the same time unless you run with both of the same proxy. So this rule, if there is a men's and grade school size dropping and you guys are trying to run the same profile, I've done before where I did run, but when you do run, if you guys have the option in the bot, I would assign the same proxy with the same profile and try to run both SKUs. Otherwise, if you have 100 tasks, then just split up 50 men's, 50 grade schools. But yeah, this rule is pretty important. I wouldn't risk running for multiples on different IPs using the same profile. You'll just risk yourself getting canceled. Thus, you'll waste a lot of your time. 3, do not use a catch-all. Use real Gmails. This rule is, back then when I was creating this guide, this was true. But then I did more testing and I noticed that catch-all actually did work. So there's certain releases where it seems like foot sites don't care or they care less. They're not as strict. But you guys are able to use catch-alls, but the best is to use real Gmails. And if you guys do need the order confirmation emails for whatever reason, if your packages get lost or if you want to do, track your receipts, then I'd recommend setting up an auto forwarding thing with AYCD or manually doing it yourself. But yeah, this rule, pretty important as well. Number 4, use assigned proxies on every unique task. Don't switch it up. Adyen can detect up to 3 days worth of IP data. If it switches up too much, it will cause fraudulent activity. Be careful not to run test tasks with the intention of not using that profile with the tested IP. So obviously, before release, you guys want to make sure your proxies work. But I wouldn't recommend you running the task with the proxy on a test on like a mock checkout, just because you're going to be risking your IP getting banned with that profile. Because if you think of it about it this way, if you're using say Canadian proxies and you tested it out a few hours before, and then all of a sudden you're using the IP in New Jersey, that's how is that even possible that you're running the same profile on 2 different countries? So just be careful when you're testing. Just as long as your proxies work.
Well, you're cutting out. Well,
All right, I'm back. Hello?
yeah.
Sorry, someone was calling. Okay, so number 4, so keep your proxies 1-to-1 ratio. Use the same proxy. Use a unique proxy with a unique profile. Number 5, your delay becomes a factor. So basically your checkout delay, which is usually set up server based, you don't really have to do anything with this. If your bot doesn't support you manually setting up your checkout delays, then I'd recommend, just running as is. But when it comes down to your monitor and your retry delay, you don't want it too low, because if you are trying to spam the page, or you're trying to spam a checkout, the system will pick that up and it will cause payment verification. Number 6, keep all information on profiles true. Do not play around with address jigging. Use what's on record linked to your bank, credit, or charge card. So yeah, your information, if for it to be true, use the USPS recommended address, and also for your card name, your keep that the same. There is flexibility with the phone number, like I mentioned, but for the most part, try to keep everything honest, and what's on file with your credit card or your bank information. Number 7, when purchasing or using proxies, data center geolocation should be close to where your billing shipping information is. Residential proxies will work better in this case. You don't live in the popular proxy locations you've seen for Virginia, seen for sale for Virginia, Ashburn, New York, New Jersey, or Chicago. So yeah, if you guys, I mentioned earlier, if I lived in Canada and I'm using US proxies, there's flexibility. I've had shipping work, so this rule doesn't apply too much. But if you want to play it safe, and you live in these popular proxy locations, then match your profile with the proxy location and you should be good. Number 8, make sure your card number, expiry, and CVC is accurate. If your CVV is entered incorrectly previously, you will receive checkout failures and cancellations or payment verification. So if you guys have information, your profiles are set up and you have something wrong with it, so say your card number is completely correct but your CVV or your expiry is a little bit off, if you keep spamming that profile and it's giving you payment declines, and you keep spamming it, but then notice there was something wrong with your card information and you change it all of a sudden, there is high chance that you're already flagged and your card's already soft banned. So double check your profiles, making sure that your card numbers are correct before you guys run a release. Number 9, phone number may be different and recommended as long as the area code first 3 digits matches your shipping location. So that's following rule number 8. And our last thought, test to see what works for you. Some people have been more consistent with getting their orders successfully processed in the past. Adyen and other payment processors will recognize this and not see this as fraud, which results in cancellations. So if you guys have a set of IP, and you guys run a set amount of profiles and you guys use consistently the same information, I would try to keep it all the same. So if you're running for a release tomorrow, have a set of IPs, 50 IPs and 50 profiles, and use the exact same proxies, exact same profiles, and you'll have a better chance of getting shipping confirmations because your order will already be trusted and you'll be able to check out with no problem. So that's about it on Adyen. If anyone has any questions, Justin and I will answer you guys right now.
Yeah, you guys
have any questions?
Any questions? Oh, guess there's no questions, huh?
Yeah, I think we covered most of it.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right,
Yeah.
so this is regarding a proxy. So on Leaf on the Leaf dashboard, when you generate proxies and then you clear them, can you generate more proxies or does it like ban the other ones that you cleared?
You can generate more.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. You can keep generating them. I think Leaf lets you generate 500, 1,000, I don't know. But you can generate them, put them on your proxy list, then clear it and generate more. They'll all work. As long as you have data. That's all that matters.
Cool. We'll stick around for 5 more minutes. See if anybody else has any questions.
Okay. Guess not a lot of questions today.
For Capital One Eno, I made a card for Foot Locker, but then I hit my limit. Can I use that on Finish Line?
No. So
So,
Capital One
no, hold on.
Eno is merchant lock.
No, hold on. Hold on. Let me answer this question.
Okay.
So you made a card on Foot Locker. If you have not used that card on Foot Locker, it works on any site. Once it's
Okay.
purchased once on whatever site, it's locked. No matter if you generate on Foot Locker, Finish Line, or Easy Supply or whatever. It's wherever you use that card first.
Okay, that's what I thought. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Cool. I think that should be all.
Yeah, that should be all. I'll get this uploaded.
Cool. All right.